is really, at the end of the day, a lot of these coding boot camps are like bullshit, and I'm gonna explain all why. I know it helps a lot of people, but a lot of the pathways people are going down can be optimized, and as an engineer, I like optimizing. So let me talk about that. And also, if you're in a coding boot camp and want to talk about how much you like your experience, that's fine. You could talk about that as well. And if you want to talk about, but I hear a ton of people talk about negative experiences, and a lot of my students do. And I want to highlight some of that. So okay, so let's say we have a story here. Let's start our story like most stories. So this is this story. Okay? We'll start very simple. So let's imagine you're a regular guy. Let's actually draw the guy right here. Let's draw a regular guy. You're a regular guy. Here's our hero. Look at them. Little stick figurine right here. This is our hero. Okay. You can see why I'm not a designer. This is our hero. Okay? Just a regular guy. And we're starting our story at a moment here where the regular guy is working a job he doesn't like, and essentially in a position where he's nice, and he's in a job he doesn't like, and he's essentially sees some like day in the life of a software engineer ad. Maybe like I see like LinkedIn has like this ad of some like girl that literally doesn't look like any software engineer I've ever met, being like her life literally looks like a Disney World like vacation promo every day. And it's like she's like, oh, I'm a software engineer, and it's not like a heavy labor job or anything like that, so I understand that there's a lot of perks to having a job like that where you're getting paid a lot and you're not doing physical labor. But at the end of the day, the reality is it doesn't look like that. Like it's not you're not going to be. It's actually pretty stressful, but typically. So, but let's say our hero, he sees this, and let's make a little text bubble. He's like, look at this. This is the guy right here. He's like, I want to be a fucking coder. Okay? And wait to curse the time. And now he's essentially yeah, I shouldn't curse yet. I want to be a F-in coder. So I can make bank. So like you have your everyday guy, he has this job that he hates, and he sees some video and he's like, okay, I want to make a lot of money and work a cushy job just like all these people. And how do I do that? So what are the first things that people often do? And this story is important because a lot of people are going through this story right now. They go online. Let's say this story, this guy right here, he goes online and I have no idea how to use this thing. I'm just going to delete. So he goes online and he starts looking up coding tutorials on YouTube. I promise you I'm not developmentally challenged. So he goes on YouTube and he looks up some tutorials, and what happens is the tutorials are hard. And he starts realizing that he's like, okay, so how do I actually code? And like okay, I have to. So he takes a C tutorial and he's like, okay, I have to compile the code. I have to send it to a server. I have to do it. Okay, wait. So what is compiling? So I'm like translating a language. Like I'm using some human understandable language, and now the computer's understanding it. And wait, what's transpiling? What's all these things? And then he realizes, and then he's like, okay, wait, there's algorithms now. Like there's data structures. Like I have to understand like how to map out real world logic into what computers can understand, and also what a layer of understanding that I have to have in order to communicate with these computers. Okay, that's hard. And now our character is in a position where he has to kind of, I'm just going to refresh to erase. So our character's at a point where he has to reconcile with the fact that day in the life programming video we saw, it doesn't align with his learning. So this is the first stage. It gave me the same thing. But anyway, this is the first stage of grief. The first stage of grief is, hold on a second. Let me just like delete this shit. Yeah, that's what I want. Let's keep the hero here. He matters. That's what he wants to know that. So let's delete that. Oh, I deleted his arm. Let's get that arm again. Looks like he's got a little mini hero here. Let me get rid of that. It's a very important part of the video. Okay, so now he's at a point where, and this is where everyone kind of hits, where now learning is hard. So I need to find a shortcut, in order to get my 100K plus cushy job. So now, let's tilt this a little bit. So now our hero is at a position where he's like, okay, I did the tutorials for like a few weeks. I get it. I get the concepts. If I'm actually working for Facebook, if I'm actually working for Google, what am I actually going to be doing day to day? Because all this is hard. I need to figure out the fastest, most efficient way that I can be like that girl on the LinkedIn day in the life videos. How do I get that? So now you have the solution. So this now becomes, let me delete this. This now becomes coding boot camps. Okay, so our hero, he's in a position now where he's being marketed to by these coding boot camps in order to fast track his way to getting that cushy 100K job. And the reality is, and I'm going to get through where our hero often goes wrong. Now we're just telling the story, but the hero goes wrong in many ways up to this point, because, and you'll see this in your development whenever you do anything, eventually you're going to get to a point where whatever you're doing, you have a position where you're like, especially in something where it's like a competitive field, or you're doing something that's like difficult and there's stakes at hand and you have to get money, that someone's going to give you an option to get there faster. And I'm not saying that option is always bad or anything like that. And also what I mean is something that's essentially something that there's the transaction in order to get that option. So you have to pay for coding boot camps. So, but the thing is, whenever you do things like that, you have to do it smart. You have to know you're being marketed to, and you have to navigate the playing field. So let's imagine our hero spends 15K to go to said boot camp. Okay. He spends 15K to go to said boot camp. And a lot of people don't make it this far. But let's imagine he now finishes the boot camp. And he feels great. And our hero, this guy right here, this guy, I promise you I'm not on the spectrum. So this guy right here, our hero now is in a position where he feels like he's learned CSS, HTML. Let's say he's becoming a front-end developer. He's learned, JavaScript. He's learned like React, all these, building blocks for him to build websites. And he's learned it in a way, and this is very, very important. This is where a lot of people fail when they get to doing their bootcamp thing. They fail because they don't important. Boot camps, let's just say, fast tracks don't teach you fundamentals. Without fundamentals, you are ineffective for the market. It's super important. Actually, I'm going to delete everything else instead of this because this is super important point. And I learned this the hard way. I'm actually going to delete our hero too. This is so important. Well, not so much the hard. I learned this as like before I had to learn it the hard way actually. So this is super important. Let's actually bold this. How do I bold? Nice. Fast tracks don't teach you fundamentals. Without fundamentals, you are ineffective for them in the market. The reason why this is important is because one thing you start realizing when you're working any sort of technical job, or I'm assuming like any intellectual pursuit, any job that requires a heavy amount of thinking, a heavy amount of training around concepts, around systems thinking. Whenever you're doing any type of job like this, you start realizing that the business you're working for or the business you're starting, if you're an entrepreneur, is not useful unless you understand the fundamentals of the fundamentals of the fundamentals of the work you're doing. And the reason why is because, and I'll actually make a good example of this. I'll get back to our hero's journey in a sec. So this is it's a really good way to describe this. So if you know React, you can get a job. If you only know React, you can get a job. If you know vanilla JavaScript and React, you can create a job. Get rid of this. And what I mean by that, and creating jobs is important, super important. Let's see, is there a better way to say that? So yeah, I think that's probably the best way to say that. So you can, yeah, so that's probably the best way to say that. So if you don't know coding in vanilla JavaScript, understand how to make everything you can do in React in just vanilla JavaScript. That's a example of understanding the fundamentals. React is a framework built on top of JavaScript. We're talking tech lingo right now. So when you understand something like React and you don't understand vanilla JavaScript, you're not going to be creating job. You can get a job, but create. So actually, I'll just say it. One creates more work. Two creates more efficiency, which creates more responsibilities. Apparently I can't spell. So, okay. Response. Let's just keep that unspelled. So, can anyone even see that? All right. So one, the one above, and two is the one below. So if you only know how to work at the higher level of something, you will always be creating more work than necessary, because your way of problem solving will always be narrow. And if there's anything that any software engineer, coder, and anyone who works in tech at the engineering layer, even if you're a hardware guy, whatever, you always know the less you understand at the lower level, the less capability you have, the less of a scope you have in terms of problem solving, the types of problems you can solve. The more you narrow the types of problems you can solve, the more work you're creating. You're literally making every system, every company, everything you work at more inefficient because of your lack of understanding. So if you know more lower level things, if you know more fundamentals, well, lower level doesn't need to be the same as fundamental. So I'll just say fundamental. If you know more fundamentals, you will be more efficient, and you will be able to create more responsibilities, which is important. If anything, if there's anything you wanna actually know from this video, is it's fucking terminal. Is there anything you want to know from this video? Hold on. It's just like, is your value on a team of engineers is largely based on the amount of responsibility you take on, are able to take on, and the responsibility you are able to generate. And I understand a lot of people are wincing at the second hand part of it. If you're experienced, you're wincing at that. And I get it. But the second part's actually super important. And I know a lot of engineers that are probably very good and understand that they actually do the second part. Because the second part can often seem like it's not good. So I'll talk about that second. So, and this gets into our hero's journey, because our hero doesn't understand that when he's going into this coding boot camp, he's becoming someone that can't do any of these by default. I'm not saying that he can't be in a coding boot camp and have that knowledge when he leaves, but typically the knowledge, and this is from mentoring a ton of people, this is from seeing that system a lot and working as an engineer, the people and I know a lot of people that went through coding boot camps that are actually awesome and probably some of the best people I know. Um, in terms of like engineers, they're very competent. Almost all of those people were working against the boot camp they were in. They were people that gained most of this knowledge that they had that makes them this type of engineer that's valuable, either on the job or they just had that value innately, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I just want to say that as an aside. I'm not saying if you went to a boot camp you're not a good engineer. I'm not trying to say that. But I'm saying that the system, the speed at which they get you to the market is not setting you up for prosperity, typically. So the amount of responsibility you're able to take on, that's a given. That seems really obvious. Where it's like, yeah, okay, if I can take on more responsibility, then people are gonna like I'm gonna be able to people are gonna like me more on the team. Like I'm gonna be able to do more for this business, be more productive for the ends, meet the ends of this business, right? The second part is you have to have an ability to generate responsibility, and what I don't mean make busy work. That's the inversion of this. So responsibility, what that means is if you produce something so valuable for this business that they have to have someone whose role it is to either manage that, to understand that, and that can be you, that could be someone else. If they require someone to train, to fill in some gap when you leave, then that means they're gonna have to have two of you when you leave. Understand? Because it takes so long because they have to work in parallel. They have to have someone onboarded to do your job and someone that's shittily doing your job at the same time, right? So I don't mean make busy work when I mean the second part. What I mean is you're creating more roles. And that's to a fault. That doesn't mean you need both of these, by the way. Don't just be someone who comes in and doesn't take on a responsibility and just, dictates a bunch of shit. You need a balance. But also don't just take on a ton of responsibility and become essentially a doormat for people without having to have that dictation, have that ability to document your code. This part is all about code documentation. That's really the source of a lot of the second part right here. Okay, so let's go back to our hero's journey. So now we talked about the value that engineers have. So our hero. Let's make our hero. Oh my god, that's a big head. Okay, our hero. Our hero right here. He's so big-eyed. He's like, look at that fucking smile on his face. I mean, He's like, oh my god, I'm gonna get a job. He's so bright-eyed. So our hero wants to, look how bright-eyed he is. So he wants to go and get this coding job and go to this boot camp. He puts down the $15,000. And he's like, wow, I'm gonna make so much free money. Okay. And then what happens? He finished the boot camp. What do you think happens? I just failed 1,000 interviews. I am demoralized. I don't even like coding. And then his little eyebrows right here. these turn into he's angry. Now, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did our hero get to a position in which he... Hold on a second. Why did our hero get into a position in which he's mad? And he doesn't like... Hold on a second. So he doesn't like his... He essentially hates what he's done. And he's demoralized, and he does it. And people tell me this all the time. It's like, oh, I went through the boot camp, I did a ton of interviews, and like I don't understand anything they were talking about. And I even did lead code problems I didn't understand. So I'm going to talk about a lot of the solutions to this problem. And how do we... So now our hero's demoralized, he hates it, and now he's back to working the job he hates. So I'm going to talk about how you can actually break into tech and be useful. And it's not easy. It's not like simple. It's not, it's actually fairly, it's a hard road. And it's, and to get that cushy job, you kind of gonna have to be fairly competitive to get there. So, and actually, I will say this. In general, you know, every now and then, like 1 out of every 100 people you'll see that you're 10. Now it's probably more so. Just the world's insane. Don't actually belong there, but. And I'm going to talk about this next video. Just kidding. I'm talking about it right now. I'm not going to clickbait you, but. So the reality. So here are the harsh kind of truths. The harsh truths. Don't you like this setup I have? Okay. 1. You probably don't, people aren't going to like this, like problem solving. And the reason why I'm saying this is one. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons why. But the reason why I'm saying this is one is because it's actually pretty important. Hold on. So the reason why this is really important here is because whenever I talk to somebody that's having trouble, and they're it's not an intelligence thing. It's not, because people always think that. They always think, oh, it's just like I'm not high IQ enough or whatever to do this. It's not even that. It's because they simply don't like problem solving. And really address, if you're going to get into a career in which to be professional, you have to be one of the best people available at problem solving. If you are in a position like that where you're like, okay, I want to get this job and I want to make this money, and I don't even like it, you're in a really bad position. And this isn't even talking about the career side. I'll talk about the career side. But this is just the very basic thing of like, the feedback loop of learning, are you getting a positive experience out of it? So that's one thing. Another thing, you're not focused. You know, I'm listening to a ton of stuff here. I'm not saying it has to be these things for you. I'm just saying, typically, these are reasons, right? You probably don't like problem solving. You're not focused. So, the worst thing you can do when you're trying to learn how to code, when you're trying to learn, whatever, JavaScript, Python, or any of these things, C, C++, Go, Rust, you know what I'm saying? There's so many languages out there. One of the things I see a ton is people want to gain mastery in all these things, right? So they want to gain mastery in, they want to know everything because they want to be the most valuable person, or it's not even that. They want to be a lot of people, they start training in a ton of different things, and a lot of boot camps do this. Well, they'll teach you like HTML one week, they'll teach you SQL like the next week or something, and then they'll teach you like CSS, and they'll teach you like Node.js, they'll teach you like all these things, and it's like that's not good. Because if you don't have fundamentals and you're learning new concepts over and over and over again, your brain doesn't understand how to make a through line. And part of like the mastery, quote unquote, is being able to make a story around what you're doing, be able to understand what you're doing while you're doing it every time. And one of the like the cheat codes of like being very efficient at getting a job in tech, or being able to build your own products, build your own apps, websites, things like this, and be effective like that. One of the things that people don't understand is your scope should be very narrow. And I don't mean like you shouldn't be for this, by the way, this isn't advice for the hyper curious. If you're someone who's just like, you just love learning stuff and you like problem solving, you're not like this is all just comes natural to you. One, you don't have to watch this video. But two, when it comes to the focus thing, don't worry too much about that. But if you're someone who's like struggling in this process, you got to pick a road, pick a language. And I'll hear this a lot where people will be like, there's not as many Go jobs as JavaScript jobs. And I'll always think, okay, well, someone that likes writing Go, that is excited to work on Go, and is also learning Go frameworks and doing everything Go, and can write blog articles about Go, with the same resume level experience, is going to be way better, more confident in an interview than somebody that is, and there's probably like, I don't even know, 10 times the amount of job openings in JavaScript, but it's like they're going to be way more prepared than someone who's, they're going to have way more magnitudes, more likely that they'll be able to get a job if there's a job opening for Go than if there was one for JavaScript. And that high level of performance really matters when you're not in a CS program, right? So people in CS programs really typically don't have a lot of these problems because they're in a pipeline to success. This video is more for people that are going through boot camps. And yeah, a lot of people in CS programs nowadays are having issues because they're not setting them up as well as they used to, it seems like, as an outsider point of view. Okay, so you don't like problem solving. You're not focused. I wrote shit about this. What did I write? I definitely wrote stuff. I wrote like this fucking story. Let me just like copy and paste this shit. Okay. You don't do deep dives. Okay. Yeah, I wrote that story, by the way. That story matters. All right. So this is a big one. This one's huge. This one's super important. So part of the reason why this one's super important is because I'm just learning my environment here. Part of the reason why the deep dive part is important is because deep dives, and what I mean by that is, it's a good way of explaining this. Remember in school where they're like, if you, for on the first page you're reading, if you don't understand 5 words on this first page, then this book is above your reading level. That goes the same for looking at a coding tutorial or learning anything, learning system architecture, learning machine learning, learning any of the stuff, learning circuitry, learning any technical discipline, especially in this arena. If you don't understand a concept, if you don't understand, and it's not just 5 like the words, right? If you don't understand a concept, you have to look into it. You have to do a deep dive on that. Spend the next 10 minutes looking into what that is. If you're looking into transformers, machine learning, and you don't understand what an embedding is, look that up. If you don't understand what a neuron is, a kernel is, if you don't understand these things, you have to look these things up. And this is super important. And I know that sounds like obvious, but it's like, so here's 2 reasons why it's important. One reason why doing deep dives is important is because you're getting a pathological relationship with mastery. And the cool thing about that, and you could say it's a little insecure actually. A lot of I remember, because I started a coding club when I was in high school, and I was doing hackathons for a long time. I'm 26 now, and since those times, there's always this weird competition of who knows more. And I don't really fully play that game, but it's that game kind of, there's an insecurity around it, but it kind of matters a little bit because it kind of checks you into be wait, why don't I know that? I should know that. And there's a insecurity around excellence. There really is. Maybe not for everyone, but it seems for most people, I'm sure Michael Jordan was really insecure about his jump shot, right? And obviously not comparing Curtis to Michael Jordan really, but I'm just saying, Floyd Mayweather, all these people that are the best at what they do, it's they probably have an insecure, every time he jabs, he's probably a little insecure. He's that was a little weak, right? That's you should be insecure a little when you don't understand a concept. Obviously, not to a healthy degree. You don't want to be one of those people that have imposter syndrome and I shouldn't be here. But I just mean, if you don't understand the concept, you should know it. You should try to know it. So there's another one. Find a community. So this one's really important. So the reason why this one's super important is because I can't move this one up. So the reason why this one's really important is because if you don't have a community in a lot of things in life, but if you don't have a community in this regard, everything's gonna be harder. Okay, so what I mean by that, and I don't mean you need to have a, I don't know, you don't need to live with 10 tech people. That would be insane. You live with 10 tech bros. I don't want to fucking shoot myself in the face. But what I mean by community could simply be you have you go to a happy hour with people that work in the field every week. And I remember me and my buddy when we were 15, we live outside Philly. We would go into Philly and go to like startup events and like meet people and stuff. I mean, you don't have to be like that crazy, but you should be conversing with other people in your mindset with anything you do. This is not a harsh truth. The harsh truth is you don't have community. Okay. I'm gonna keep it in the. I love themes, so. Alright. So if you don't have community, everything's gonna be harder. So make things easier. So everywhere you move is gonna be more difficult if you don't have community. You don't have to be fully, ingratiated. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to be crazy, like going to an event or just hanging out with people all week. But like most people I talk to are like who are not qualified, junior developers and have the job. They typically were referred or got the job through a software engineer they know. And that's really huge. And also, a part of that whole culture fit thing that people say is really because you don't know how to talk like them. Just being real. I know that sounds not great, but it's just reality. Like, if you don't know how to talk the lingo, people are going to be like, oh, like, I didn't know what, like, X thing meant. And I'm just going to... This is like the same thing. This is the same fucking thing. Where's my list? I have like a list of these. Why don't I just show? Oh yeah, you're not. Yeah, this is actually the most important one, but I'm gonna put this at the bottom. So the sixth one, yeah, the you don't network. That's like the same thing. This is actually the most important one. This is just true. This is just true. Like, I don't know what to tell people when they when they're talking to me and they're like, "Oh, I don't understand this." And how do I like learn like you? How do I get to a point where I can do this like you? Cuz I would code all the time. Like I would always have a project. I still to this day am always working on something. And I think a lot of people are like, "Okay, like well, not everyone needs to do that because I can just get some junior level job where I'm just making React components and that's fine." Okay, so here's a reality check. To everyone think that they don't need to, everyone that thinks that they don't need to like be high performance or they don't need to code a lot or they can just kind of do the boot camp and they can just like, then they'll get the job and they'll kind of harsh reality. Especially right now, from like 2012 to like 2016, 18, roughly, there was a huge boom of very young people like me at the time who learned to code and were just constantly building stuff, going to hackathons, there was a huge culture around engineering and tech. Through that culture, a ton of people who are still young now, who are still like in their 20s, early 30s now, a lot of those people still exist and are still getting these jobs. And some of these people are just getting, you want to know a real like tech black pill right here. A lot of these people are getting multiple jobs at the same time. Some of these people, and the people that just don't know. And you gotta understand, you're competing with people who build all the time. It's not as simple as you just get the job and then you get in the career and then all that. No, if you don't have some other attributes, and if you don't have like the referral from your community, if you don't have that hyper focus, which those are the two. There's two things. Let me just remember. So two major things. Hyper focus on a track or network like a mother. People are gonna know what I'm saying. These are the two major things, key things. These are the two things that you should do if you're not like really, really good and you don't build a ton of open source projects and you can't do well in interviews. You have to do one of these two things if you want to actually, in my opinion. You have to hyper focus on a track. So like I said with the Go example, join Go online communities, build a ton of Go shit, learn every Go framework you can, and then through that you'll understand the disciplines. So you'll understand web development, you'll understand server architecture, you'll understand deployments and shit like that. But do it through Go, so you're kind of doing a hyper focus. That's a way, and then you could do it now. There's an AI craze, so you can do it through shit like that, right? Find a hyper focus or network like crazy. Okay, so most people don't want to network like crazy, so just find a hyper focus. Like you need to have you need to be in front of people a lot if you want to beat out the crazy good resumes. But yeah, you're probably not building enough, honestly. And also whenever you build something, whenever you work on a project, you should put it in front of people. That's what I would do when I was like a teenager all the time. I'd build something and I'd post it on Hacker News. That was like a ritual. And I'd get feedback and I'd argue with people because what I made sucked. But I mean, I was in these weird visual C++ forums when I was 13 or something, and I would be like, oh, I made this thing, I call it the homework engine. It was like a calculator or something, and people were like, you just copy and pasted this shit, you're a piece of. And I'd be like, oh my god, my ego. But that mattered because it actually made me a lot better. And I also learned how to communicate in these spaces. But yeah, so these are the harsh truths. These are your harsh truths. The really big one, I think, if there's the big... Actually, let's go back to the first one. So, the first one is... I kind of didn't talk about it too much, but yeah, you probably don't like problem solving if you're having, a really tough time. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I'm saying, more likely than not, if you're having a really tough time with interviews and stuff like that, and you're having a really tough time learning in the learning phase, not with interviews, nix that. If you're having really problems in the learning phase and you just, can't learn how to code, there's a good chance it's not because everyone else is smarter than you and all the fatalistic thoughts. Probably because you just don't like it. Just being straight up. I've never seen someone that would complain about learning how to code that was really excited to problem solve. I haven't seen that. You want a harsh truth. I just haven't seen that. Focus is huge. Hyper focus. And this is a positioning thing, and this is a game theory thing. This is you trying to get a job as fast as possible. That's the hyper focus thing. I personally don't think that's a big deal. in terms of this probably shouldn't even be number two. Um, for the grand scheme of your life, like you should just be curious about a lot of stuff. But if you're like, if you have a time limit, you just quit your Amazon job. Like I would say, the focus and network are like the main things to beat out the competition like that. So deep dives. Just think pathological instinct to know everything. So just when I say deep dive, research a topic thoroughly that you don't understand, and then go back to what you were doing. Just keep going on these little rabbit holes. So you should, and you should like feel weird when you don't understand something. You don't have community, yeah. So that one's kind of self-explanatory. And then you don't have a network. You don't network, yeah. Most people that want to sit on a computer and solve little weird problems all day are not social. So yeah, it's gonna be hard for you to network and get a job if you don't have a social ability. So try to do one of these other things, or try to find someone that's good at that, buddy up with them, kind of like work with them. And maybe you guys pair up and go to events together or something like that. You don't build enough. So this one's just went through it, but I want to go talk about this again. So what I mean by build, what I mean is like you don't make enough projects. That's really it. Try to always have some project, even when you're super early. Like I remember when I didn't even know, like I had an idea of something I wanted to build in web development before I even knew anything about anything. And as I was learning PHP and MySQL and all this shit, I was like thinking of the thing I wanted to build in mind. And I was like, wait, and I was trying to align a lot of these concepts I was learning with that greater vision. So I had a directed learning because I was like, oh, I want to build a website like Facebook. And and I looked at PHP because that's what Facebook was in. And I was like a kid, right? And I was like looking at the tutorial. I'm like, wait, so users are in a database? Things just started clicking because I had a reference point that was greater than my current understanding. So even if you're like, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't know how to code, so I shouldn't think of a project. That's the opposite. No, you should think of a project because you don't know how to code. So, so that's that. So yeah, this is really it. I mean, we don't have to go on and on about it. This is, overall, this is like, I want to just sort of talk about the harsh truths. And if you're in a situation where you're in a coding boot camp and you're like, oh, this sucks and I'm not, this is it. You're going to have to figure out how to, this point where I'm talking about, where it's like the market is flooded with people that can do these things efficiently. Really think about how you can position yourself well. It doesn't mean there's not a space for you, but that means that you have to think smart. And this isn't like 2014 when you could just like pick up a laptop and be like, oh, hi, can I learn? Oh, what's Ruby? Now you have to kind of really think ahead more so. Cool. So, all right. And also, if anyone watched the video and you got some value out of it, like the video, subscribe. But also, you can contact me. I'm going to put my details under the video because I do mentor people. So if you need help, I have a ton of students that I've been helping throughout the past year. And it seems like people like it. So Yeah, and if this is what I mean is like if you're a student, you're trying to get internships. If you're a junior role and you're trying to get to the next level, or if you're a lot of skill building stuff or interview prep, just navigating stuff, you just need like a buddy, then I can help you out with that. So